Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate pros. Brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics, in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it.
Hey, take it away.
All right. Appreciate the opportunity to host and obviously to be on here with a bunch of colleagues and mentors and friends. And thanks for making that pivot from Microsoft Teams over to Zoom. That's a big term these days, just being able to pivot and move with things as they come. So let's jump in here. I'm going to introduce our three guests for the evening, and then we'll get right into this, talking about COVID in the professional space in pro sports. So three guests tonight. As was mentioned, Karam Hamdani is in his sixth season with the Montreal Impact as a certified athletic therapist. His experience also includes professional and amateur levels. He graduated with a degree in athletic therapy from Concordia University in 2008. And he's polished his craft with continuing education certifications, including active release techniques, FMS, SFMA, Exos mentorships, and reconditioning, just to name a few. Our second guest is with the Redblacks, Marie Costaguta. Marie-Claire obtained her Bachelor of Applied Science in Athletic Therapy with high honors from Sheridan College. She's a certified athletic therapist with the Canadian Athletic Therapy Association and an emergency medical responder. She joined the Redblacks, where she was privileged to work under the head AT at the time, Dave Wright. And after the team's successful Grey Cup win, she moved to Petawawa to join BC Athletic Therapy and Bracing. On her return to Ottawa, she spent 3 years as an assistant AT with Carleton University's men's football team, where she gained experience as a coach and therapist for the Junior Ravens football program. In January 2020, Marie-Claire returned to TD Place Stadium as the lead assistant athletic therapist for the CFL's Ottawa Redblacks. Dom Nicoletta is our third guest on here this evening. Part of the panel, he's a proud Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario native and spent his youth playing soccer there. He obtained a certificate in athletic therapy from York in 2000 and became a certified athletic therapist in 2001. His pro sports career began there as an assistant with the Toronto Argonauts in the CFL, and then hockey life began the very next season as an assistant with the Ottawa Senators. As a result of the lockout in 2004, he became the head athletic therapist of the Senators AHL affiliate in Binghamton, New York. 5 seasons in the AHL, he returned to the NHL as the assistant AT with Ottawa in 2009. In 2017, he was promoted to head athletic therapist of the club and currently remains in this role today. In 2019, Dom represented Canada as a head athletic therapist for the IIHF World Hockey Championships in Slovakia. What a panel, what a mouthful, and just an amazing group to get us started with this discussion. We're all here in these times and dealing with a lot of uncertainty. So let's jump right in here and see how things are working. Dom, maybe let's start with you. The NHL is up and running, moved into the playoffs now. A nice little report out today that 20% of the St. Louis Blues team had COVID entering the bubble or just prior to entering the bubble. Not that has anything to do with you other than, your hockey, you're in these circles. Let's take your view on sort of, or your angle, what the NHL has done to this point in terms of managed COVID, the move into the bubble, and what was expected on your end.
Thanks, James, for the nice introduction, first of all, and hello, everyone. Well, the NHL they grouped their return to sport in phases. So there was phase one where there was no activity at all, and you're expected to quarantine as much as possible, and really stick to the guidelines of whatever community you're in or country that you're in. I think we stopped. It was March 12th. I think we came off the road. We were in Southern California at that time. We ended up playing those 3 Southern Californian teams, or some Northern California, and then we were called back home. And I think that was when the NHL stopped on that day, the 12th or 13th of March. And then phase 2 began in June. So phase 2 was brought in that's small groups, no more than 6 at a time, testing every 3 days. And there was a whole plethora. So then phase 3 was full team, and then phase 4 was return to play as it was. And there's, I don't know how in depth you want me to get into each phase, and we can go into depth if you'd like to, but each phase increased testing, obviously, but the basics from phase 2 carried basically through. And maybe that's what I'll talk about a little bit. So obviously you had to come into your city if you were able to. So at the time, you could not travel. So really you were restricted to people that were within the country, or at least within your province or within your city, or athletes, I should say, that you could deal with. They had to test negative 48 hours prior to entering the facility. And then there were daily symptom and temperature checks done on their own at home and reported. The NHL used an app for this purpose, so they would get a prompt 2 hours before they had to enter the facility, and they would take their own temperature, have their own symptoms. And this is already when they were already tested negative. And then once they got to the facility, then you were required to have another temperature taken, and this was done by our newly hired hygiene officer. So we had to hire a hygiene officer, and we also had to become affiliated with a infectious disease specialist for our team. Those were all mandated by the NHL. So they were
No, a ton of sort of like infrastructure, right? Some changes just there already. Just
lots
in
of
terms
infrastructure.
building these phases in. Yeah, absolutely. And not to cut you off, because I think there's so much detail that we can get into.
No, go for it.
But just summarizing the phases and where the NHL is and where it got to and how we got through there. We'll definitely come back around to it, just to generally introduce where each sport and each station is at. Let's jump over to the CFL. Obviously, some pretty heartbreaking news, crushing to a lot of professionals, both athletes and professionals. So MC obviously dealing with the news over the past sort of week, 10 days of the CFL season being canceled. What sort of takeaways have you had? What kind of interactions with the Redblacks or within the CFL have you had in terms of takeaways with that news?
Yeah, it was really disappointing. It was, we shut down like most leagues in March, and just started up again in terms of opening our facilities in June. And then just not knowing when the season would start, it was like kind of a vague training, trying to get mentally prepared for, because at the time they didn't know how they were going to do it, right? And then finally, they decided on a hub city model, just like the NHL. And so Winnipeg was chosen, and then everything was kind of focused on creating, the protocols and figuring out how we would get, most of our players are Americans, so it's how do you get those guys across the border? And then unfortunately, we're a smaller league. We need, our revenue comes mostly from people coming and watching us play. So we really depended on financial assistance, and we just didn't get the assistance we had asked for. So they pulled the plug on this season. Last Monday they made the announcement. And so we're planning for next year. We don't know what's going to happen next year. They're thinking of different ways to create revenue, kind of it's not the greatest business model, unfortunately, especially when you can't bring people up in to see us play. So but at least we have enough time to, if we are to go to maybe a hub city again next year, at least we have enough time to like really sort stuff out and get organized.
Yeah, and maybe sort of that old making lemonade with the lemons is here's a full year for these athletes to really get themselves kind of back to sort of tip-top shape. You know, last time they hadn't played football in a year and a half is probably a long time ago in their lives. And then, hey, maybe you can take this model forward. I just kind of thought of it as you were talking. Maybe people can take pictures of themselves, and then instead of buying a ticket, they like pay to have their self in the stands, you know, like one of those fatheads or something. I don't know, go with that one. There's a gate, you know, I'd pay to have my seat right behind your bench for sure.
Yeah.
Not to make light of it, it's a big blow. You know, I've talked to a few CFL athletes over the past few days, and there's lots of things that we'll get into with you in terms of, you know, the coping strategies and what we can do as therapists and part of a bigger integrated team in terms of how we can support athletes and how we can support one another through these times as well. I think it's going to go a long way just having insight from each of you, and everybody's in a different situation, which is, again, not to make light of it, but in this situation, we have the NHL, we have the CFL, and then Karam, we have you in MLS, and things are somewhere in between, right? Like they started out and there's a bunch of cases. They had to cancel, I guess, a couple teams from playing, right? From entering the bubble when they moved into the bubble, and now playing. They've moved sort of outside the bubble. You guys are playing a Canadian. You can give us a rundown on what's going on in the MLS. That'd be great, and then we can we'll dive in a little deeper with each one of you. I think this is amazing that we have such a breadth of how things are happening, and it'll supply a lot of information for everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you once again for the presentation. With regards to the MLS, it was kind of similar to the NHL in terms of our phases of return to play and return to practice. It was pretty much phase 1 individual training, phase 2 small group training, and then phase 3 full team training. And once you get to phase 3, you incorporate testing, and the testing is done every other day. And all that happened prior to us going into the bubble, which was held in Orlando. Actually, our bubble was like adjacent to the NBA's bubble, right by Disney. Once we made it into the bubble, we had to quarantine immediately. Well, get tested and quarantine immediately. You do a first test. Once all that comes back negative, you're allowed to practice, but still need to do a second batch of tests and make sure that everybody is negative once again. Once you get 2 confirmed negative tests, then you sort of fall into the cadence of every other day testing, day before game testing, and then day after game testing. Overall, the experience was pretty good in the bubble. You don't know what to expect, so people are really being extra prudent. You know, they wear the masks. They protect themselves to the best of their capacities, and for the most part, things went very, very smoothly. Now we've moved on to the first phase of return to play in market. And that's the biggest difficulty that the MLS is facing today. They've got 3 teams in Canada and the rest of their teams in the US. And As we all know, the border is blocked. So phase 1 for Canada is the Canadian teams play against each other. Phase 2 is almost like the presidents of the clubs are crossing their fingers and going, okay, let's hope the Canadian border is going to open their border and allow American teams to sort of come in.
Right.
But we still don't know what's going to happen for phase 2. There's talk about teams relocating to the US for the remainder of the season. There's talks about the partial quarantine, but all that is like up in the air. It's all speculation. There's nothing really set in stone, and understandably so, because we're really facing the unknown. You know, just like you said, 2 teams came in to the bubble when we first started, And within the span of 3 days, one team had 10 cases and the other team had 9. And so it's like you got to put them all in lockdown and make sure that it doesn't spread. So it just goes to show that crossing the border might not necessarily be a good idea, at least not just yet.
Yeah, and so then we take in all the, we have the governing bodies within the sport, and those also have to obey the governing bodies of the countries that they're housed within, and then the international relations between the two, plus the travel rules. There's a ton of overlap here that just, really muddies the water up. And our government announced that the borders closed until I think the 21st of September at the earliest, and then they'll revisit that. So playing with schedules and people's livelihoods and these kinds of things, it's not to be taken lightly. But one thing I think that we can take away maybe from it, definitely from the pro sports side of things, is the amount that we can all learn from the sports that are currently active. Like Dom, I know the Senators aren't part of the bubble, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, but you're learning probably through all of the other athletic therapists, through all of the other hygiene officers, and all these new roles that are being created. And one thing that's always nice to hear is that the athletes are being diligent and the staff are being diligent to put your mask on, not necessarily just for yourself, but for something bigger than you. And so that kind of enhances that communal feel of like, we're all in this together. It's very cliched and we've heard it a million times, and we've also all been on Zoom for hours and hours and hours. But that part of it, we can really live through pro sports. So Dom, in terms of, the Senators, you and I talked briefly, and you're not in the bubble, but there's other considerations to keeping the athletes right and fit, and in August and July, and maybe the season's going to start earlier or later next season. Who knows? So what are the considerations on the Senators' part in terms of getting back together at this point?
For sure. Well, right now our facility is still closed.
Right.
So we haven't opened up yet. So all communication with the athletes is like you said, over Zoom or just through phone calls. Right now it's heavy with the strength conditioning team that we have. They're just keeping track of guys and make sure that they're on track with their programs or seeing if they need anything. We were very fortunate when we stopped play that we didn't have any serious injuries that we had to deal with. So just some minor things that guys were able to resolve just with time, and they're on their own, and they were training on their own and healthy. So we had a few surgeries, but they were at the AHL level, and those were done in the States and taken care of, and then they're rehabbing back in their home cities.
Right.
As far as what to expect, as far as we know right now, it looks like it's going to be a November training camp and a December start tentatively. So still tentatively, they don't know for sure yet. So I think it's a December 1st to restart the league. Mid-November as a training camp. So we'll probably open the doors, I'm going to assume October.
Okay.
And then we'll go start into phase 2. Yeah.
Yep.
So phase 2 is to get again with the small groups, and then transition into training camp where you'll have to do your full, like you would at the beginning of any season. Your PPMEs and things like that.
Right. Yeah. No.
As far as communication with the athletes. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, no, constant communication, right? And then reiterating some of the things that they may or may not be paying attention to. The longer this goes on, the shorter the attention span is for human beings to be diligent with what they're doing. We get a little bit lazy, we get a little bit sloppy as we get further along. You can see that in the gym or in treatment on our part as therapists and these kinds of things. So you got to still be on the ball with that with all your athletes, I'm sure.
I'll give for sure. I'll give the NHL some credit too. So for the facilities that did open, or teams that did go into training camp, the 24 teams, they all had to watch an educational video and slideshow presented by the head athletic therapist. So the league did put together an information package for them, and it reiterated the health and safety portion of it, of what to expect and how to handle your own hygiene and proper hand washing and face mask wearing and social distancing and things like that. So they were well aware that this may be something that would need to be brought up to a level that everyone was on par with, instead of just hoping that they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, exactly. No, great insight. And to hear that goes a long way for a lot of people who might not, we just get the news reports, we just hear some things on Sportsnet or TSN or whatever we're picking up. And it's great to hear that there's a lot of diligence and they're involving, you and athletic therapists across the league to really inform their teams. Cause that's where the connections lie, right? Like the people rely on you that are within that organization for a lot of things. So that goes a long way. And then MC, with you, I don't want to bias this in any way, but I mean, not getting to see your guys and your staff, your colleagues and everybody in the organization in one place, it's got to be difficult, right? To sort of stay connected and do that through Zoom and regular meetings. How are you coping as a therapist in this time?
So I've just come back, so I don't know a lot of the guys on the team.
Okay.
And they're so scattered. So I mean, we have about 20 guys on the team who are currently in Ottawa, and we have about 12 to 15 guys who come into the facility. So I can talk to them and keep see how they're doing and everything. But in terms of keeping in contact with the rest of the team, just all over North America, we've had a few Zoom calls, but they're mostly done by the coaches. So it's nothing like health related, really. But I think eventually we're going to have to start reaching out to them and seeing how they're doing. Because I'm sure like wherever they are, they're hopefully adhering to their local guidelines. But you never know with some of these guys. It's such a big team, such a big roster. Like our training camp, we were supposed to bring 115 guys in to camp, and to think about having to deal with all those bodies. And I think we're really going to have to step back and really look at how we conduct ourselves in terms of training camp and treatments and game time and just locker room. Everything's going to have to be looked at and maybe modified to kind of bring us up to whatever guidelines are in place at the time, right? We don't know what's going to happen in 6 months, but hopefully we can be a little more relaxed, but we never know.
Yeah, and football maybe has an advantage in that the field has like yard markers on it, so you can really police how spread out guys are just like eyeballing it, And again, not to make light of it, but I think like maybe moving back towards sort of like that high school pickup football where like locker rooms are outside, you got to get dressed outside. Like some of these sacrifices in these high-end facilities that are just really condensed and small spaces for a lot of bodies, there's a whole lot more considerations to all of these things now. Especially with like the asymptomatic carriers, right? Like that's the most bizarre part of this, is that somebody cannot, if they're not getting tested on a regular basis, and even so, the testing is shown not to be like a high percentage of false negatives. So it's a bit of a no, it's not a bit. It's a lot of a problem, to consider. And so you bring up some great points with that. And I just hope, for the best that those guys that are getting in there with you are relaying that they really appreciate what you're doing for them and with them. And, therapists are in a tough spot right now, across the country, across the world. And so doing our best to sort of check in but also check in on ourselves. And that's one thing that I've really picked up on lately, just in doing these chats and in working through this sort of space, is to, pick up the phone and call people and check in on them. Because if it's hard on you, it's hard on everybody else. And once we recognize that in ourselves, it just goes a little bit further to kind of check in on those, maybe the athletes or maybe the GM or, somebody that you have a relationship with that isn't saying anything. They might be struggling more than they're letting on. So like that mental health component of things and building it in when there is no season. The physical check-ins are great, and like being together physically is great. But when we can't do that, there are some other things that we can do, like Dom had touched on and you've touched on. And then Karam, with you guys are playing, right? And you said this audience in here right now, and then picking this up later, hopefully on podcast and YouTube, might not be bigger than what was in a stadium recently. So stadiums are not supposed to house any audiences or fans at this point in time, but there was some visuals of a game that was played, I think, last night, right, with some people in the stands. And how is that being handled? Or was there any insight on that? Or is it just kind of, it is what it is, and we'll correct that for next time? Or do you have any insight on that? Don't speak to it if you don't feel like you can.
No, absolutely. I mean, there was 70-page document that was sent out to each club. That 70-page document came from the MLS directly. That same document got translated to French and sent to the government, and the government has to approve that document prior to any fans coming in, any fans showing up. I mean, all the appropriate measures were taken. The fans had to fill out questionnaires. Temperature checks were done at the entrances. It is a 20,000 spectator stadium, so we can assume that the social distancing was appropriately set up. The spectators weren't even allowed to be in any form of close contact with any of the individuals who were playing the game. You have 3 tiers of people. So tier 1 would be the first team and all the close people related to the first team. So you've got the athletic training staff, the conditioning staff, the coaching staff, the equipment and operations. That's all tier 1. And the testing cadence goes in consequence of your tier, so to speak. So we get tested every other day. You've got tier 2 individuals, and they're separated into 2 groups. You've got the tier 2s that are close to the first team, and they test at the same cadence as us. You've got tier 2s that test only the day prior to the game. And then you've got the tier 3 people, and that includes your regular population and your spectators. They don't get tested, but they do have to fill out that questionnaire and get the temperature checks. Obviously, all the tests is on the club's payroll, so to speak. So they have to assume all those costs, and it's a pretty expensive test, so to speak. So
again, lots of considerations, with this and getting back in. And MLS is a fairly popular league. I'm no insider to know, what's the most the richest leagues and these kinds of things, but these are cost considerations to returning to sport and this livelihood. And the return to sport is great on a lot of levels. It provides people at home some sense of normalcy, I guess, or some entertainment and things like that, but there are greater risks involved. And so has that testing kind of worn out its welcome with you and with the squad that's being tested on a regular basis, or are you guys just pretty much it's part and parcel and we're good? This allows us to play the game, so let's keep doing it.
Yeah, at first we were doing for nasopharyngeals, so tickling the brain a little bit. But we have migrated from the posterior one to the anterior one. And we've been getting pretty much the same results. We haven't done saliva because it's still not approved in Canada. So we've been doing mostly posterior, anterior. The guys hated the posterior ones, obviously. They're okay with the anteriors, but you're still putting something up their nose and tickling, so they're I wouldn't say worn out their welcome, because that is the tool that allows them to play, and they want to play. Right. So it's a sacrifice they have to make.
Yeah, no, great insight, and everybody sharing with us. Let's take that word and pivot just for a second. And MC, have you taken on anything new in this downtime during COVID? You picked up, I don't know, the ukulele, or I don't know, anything big on your radar?
I've jumped on board the SUP bandwagon, so I bought a stand-up paddleboard, and I've been trying to get.
Ah, nice. All right, very good. I thought you were going to say I really hopped on Tiger King and I'm just all over it. So I'm glad you didn't. Paddleboarding sounds much more productive. Beautiful. Dom, we talked video games a little bit, man. What else have you picked up in this time, in your downtime away? Anything new?
Just refining the cooking skills for me. refining the cooking skills. Yeah, seeing what little gems of wine I put away and forgot about.
There you go. Anybody who doesn't
Lots of
follow
reading,
Dom's,
but mostly cooking.
yeah, your Instagram has some great kitchen too. So anybody who's not following them, get on there, because there's some. I don't even know what half the stuff is or how to cook it at least anyway. So if it doesn't just
I don't know
heat
if
up in the
anybody know if I
microwave,
was
I'm
an
in
AT
trouble.
or not by my Instagram.
That's all right. That's all right. Multi-talented. And Karam, how about you, man? In the throes of it all, man. Anything new? You had any time for anything other than like learning how to do nasal swabs and how long Q-tips can really be and all kinds of other things?
I mean, along the same lines of Dom, cooking. Hey, Dom, hopefully one day when all this is said and done, I'll swing by Ottawa and I'll make you one of my mean tiramisus. I'm known to like make a killer tiramisu. Oh. And MC, you too. We'll
yeah, I was just gonna say I'm Italian, so I'm half Italian. So
hey, that's free passage right into my heart there.
This is it. This is where we're going. Let's just stay right here and talk about tiramisu and how we even make that. Now let's jump back in, man. I just read and heard a little bit about like the Dolphins, Miami Dolphins of the NFL. And I know nobody here is with the NFL, but they've just planned to sort of allow, potentially 13,000 fans to come into their home game. Granted that their stadium is a little bit bigger than most, but that was the kind of the initial proposal, a maximum of 13,000 fans to be at the first home opener on the 20th of September. I don't know. Miami seems like a hotbed. I'm not making these decisions, but risk and reward, right? And this is a big consideration in my world in terms of programming on the strength side. For youth athletes now, definitely, and on the rehab side with anybody that we work with is what am I doing? What are the risks with what I'm doing, and what is the potential reward? And if the reward doesn't outweigh the risk, I'm not sure that it's quite worth it. I don't know. So just interesting to see the different dynamics of the leagues and really trying to figure out how these things are happening. So. MC, the CFL, you won a Grey Cup, right, in the CFL with the Redblacks, and then you came back to the Redblacks. Cool little journey. Tell us a little bit about the travel around in between, and then how you got back to the Redblacks, just from like a career perspective. We'll step away from COVID just for a minute here.
Oh, sure. So I was very lucky to get a summer placement in 2015 with the Redblacks. And that was kind of how I made my connection. So after I graduated, I came on board as the fourth therapist. Won a Grey Cup, which was really awesome. I was joking the other day, it's either a Grey Cup or COVID. Like there's no in between for me right now.
Yeah, wow. You've got both ends of it for sure.
But for the past 3 years, I've been at Carleton with their men's football team. And I really enjoyed it. I think I learned a lot there. I had a little bit more responsibility. And so coming back to the Redblacks, I feel a lot more confident as a therapist, especially within football. And I really hope for a season next year because I really would like to do at least another season with these guys.
Yeah, it'll be Grey Cup again. It'll be a nice little Grey Cup sandwich, right? Grey Cup, COVID, Grey Cup. It'll be nice. Dom, you've been in it a while, man. You've been in the NHL or in the NHL ranks in the AHL since the early 2000s. How do you kind of keep things fresh on that end? You've been somewhere for a while, and sometimes we feel like we're there for a while and we get a little stagnant, or we get a little bit, I don't want to say lazy, but sometimes we just fall into a groove and we kind of stay in it. I know that's not the case with everybody that speaks of you. No. Speaks very highly, and we have some common ground. So how do you keep yourself sort of prepped and primed through that career in hockey?
Well, the job does help. I'll give you that. When you're around high performance athletes and you're around attitudes and growth mindsets, it's not difficult. I know you can get set in your ways, but every year there's new kids coming in and they're pushing for jobs, and they're you see their work ethic, and then you're also surrounded in the same token with some great veterans and guys have been in the league to 10, 15 years and really know how to manage the day and manage their time and effort and skill. So it definitely it does rub off on you, and when you see that type of effort from your athletes, you can't help but want to stay on top of the cutting edge things that are coming to, or just bettering your own skills so that you can stay ahead of that curve with them and continue to help them stay on whatever playing surface they're on. Yeah, the young guys breathe the life into you, and the older guys are great conversation.
well, yeah, well put. And this, yeah, and the Senators have been for a couple of years, bringing in lots of young kids, and I'm sure that kind of definitely fuels the fire, and you get to educate a lot, and you get to teach them the ropes from being young men into sort of like NHL vets. You're already one, so you can kind of coach them on that side of things. I'm sure it goes a long way in that locker room and within the organization. Karam, your question will be something geared towards your knowledge of the sport and how much that helps you as an AT within the pro soccer world. How much soccer background do you have? Do you feel like that's a benefit, a deterrent, or somewhere in between?
I wouldn't say that I'm like I've never really played soccer professionally, so like my internships were in soccer, so my field and clinical internships were in soccer at Concordia University's varsity teams. And so I grew up loving the sport. Soccer and basketball were my two big sports that I always had a passion for. But one thing that I do have to say is the moment you get immersed in the sport, you just, you pick up on it, and you start picking up on small little things that outsider you don't really see, I now enjoy playing FIFA on my PlayStation, and you start like looking at the different strategies. You start watching the EPL a lot more. You start watching the Spanish league, the Italian leagues, Champions League. You even start watching Liga MX. You just want to immerse yourself in the sport, because let's face it, it is a global sport, So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, awesome answers across the board, and different questions, and I could flip those around and ask each one of you each one of those questions, but just a little bit of insight into who you are as a professional and as a person, and it really shines through in this profession. And this is what I love doing with these conversations on a regular basis with colleagues and mentors and all the people that I have access to and have had access to and with, is really driving that home. When you're doing something that you really love doing, it's pretty simple, and that kind of rejuvenates you on a regular basis. It's the people you work with, it's your mindset, it's that growth mindset that Dom touched on, MC touched on, like needing to get back to the field, because it's just part of you, it's bred into us just as much as it is in the athletes, and I think that's critical. I think that when we support athletes, they feel that as well. And one sort of common thread of the conversations that I've been lucky enough to have over the past few months through this pandemic has really shone through in terms of relationships. So maybe let's go down this path a little bit. I know we're straying a little bit from COVID, but everybody's talked about COVID for a really long time, and I think it's important to also talk about some other things when we're talking about this pandemic. So is there any strategies, we'll just work in reverse order here, Karam, that you use to sort of get to know your athletes maybe a little bit better on intake, beyond sort of I don't know, maybe a physical evaluation or asking about their families, or I don't know, is there something that you do to really get to know your athletes that helps you?
Yeah, I always try to find some common ground that that we may have together, and I try to communicate with all of my athletes as much as possible, because communication is key. And I don't care if you're the 16-year-old guy that just signed his first contract, or you're the 30-year-old father of three. You know, when you come into the facility, to me, you know, you're an athlete, you're my athlete, and I will, you know, strive to the best of my capacities to make sure that I take care of you, you know. I really try to, you know, get to know them on a personal level, you know. While I'm treating, I'll ask them questions about their personal lives. I mean, not to dive into like too much personal stuff, but like, you know, hey, what'd you have for breakfast today? Or what'd you, you know, where'd you go out to eat last night? And that's pre-COVID days, by the way, because like now nobody wants to go out anywhere, so they're staying at home, you know. So
they're waiting for that tiramisu. That's what they're doing.
Yeah. So I just, you know, and then as you know, continue doing that, they sort of grow onto you, and you grow onto them, and you know, that's really how I try to do things with that. I try to make my therapy, I shouldn't say my therapy room, but the therapy room, like a safe place, and for them to know that that is the place that they can, you know, come to and just talk amongst themselves and talk to me if need be. My office is the same thing, you know. So that's what I try to enhance as an atmosphere within our organization.
Nice, very good. Dom, let's move across. Same question, and then we'll jump back into a couple more COVID questions. There are a couple coming in that are great questions that we should touch on too. But anything you do, Dom, to get to know your athletes after all this time that you've been in the NHL? Any questions that go a long way to get to know? Yeah.
The best way I'll give it to you is Karam had a lot of great ideas there. Is just be yourself. Talk about things that you enjoy. Talk about things that interest you, and you will find someone who has the same interest or interested in, like, really, what, I didn't realize you liked espresso, or you liked wine, or what, like, you know. So things like that. And as funny as this may seem, whoever has the, you know, in our therapy rooms, we're lucky enough to have, you know, TVs in the rooms and stuff like that. So there's always highlights ad nauseum on, and then when everyone gets sick and tired, the highlights at about 10:30 in the morning, we're like, can we switch this over to something else? You know, then it's interesting to see what guys gravitate to. There's a lot of, you know, HD TV going on, little CNN, little Food Network if I had my choice, and that's on there, and they're like, why do you keep watching this Food Network? You know,
keep upgrading. That's great, man. I think those are,
and that's right. Excellent.
That's amazing,
but
man.
I like to touch a little bit, Karam. That was a great comment about the therapy room being a safe haven, and it absolutely is. The amount of things that athletes are comfortable telling you, and it's an absolute important process in sport. They must, that's their vent, that's their release, they need to get that off their chest, because more than likely you're one of the few people that are able to take what they've said and be neutral about it, and just absorb it or expel it and move on, and they feel better, and you've done more than your hands could ever do in that 15 minutes of everything. So that was a great point.
Yeah, well captured, both of you. MC, how about you in your time working here in the pro sport world? Anything you do to get to know those athletes a little bit better? Jump in.
Yeah, it's very similar to what Karam and Dom have said. I think just being open. I think communication is one of probably the biggest things. You know, I've probably come from a very different background than the players that I'm dealing with. So it's always good to take an interest in them. And it doesn't negate the fact that, you know, that they don't lose respect for me as a therapist, and I don't lose respect for them as an athlete. Like, we can still have that relationship. Yeah, just communication is key, so that they, you know, you can build a trust with them. And it makes things a lot easier when, you know, times are really tense on the sidelines, and, you know, communication.
Yeah, awesome. A question came in here. We'll jump back into COVID. Whoever feels like responding first, just hit the buzzer. With regards to planning for emergency situations, how have your protocols changed for COVID, if they have? For example, are you still doing CPR if needed? Do you have PPE designated for such circumstances? To your recollection or your knowledge, have there been any other changes in EAPs? Either league mandated, team mandated, or self-mandated at this point. Karam, you're live right now in terms of a season. Have you changed anything in your protocols? I mean, the amount of testing that's going on kind of leaves you at a stalemate. You know, if everybody's negative, then we just go as is. But has anything changed for you?
So in terms of protocols, we're abiding by CARA's protocols, by the CTSQ's protocols. We're also abiding by the league's protocols. You hit it like nail in the coffin there. The amount of testing that we're doing leaves us with a certain level of comfort. You know, so for example, the CPR. I mean, we've got all the tools to sort of protect us, and we're going in with full PPE with the gloves and what have you not. Now I understand that the mask is there, and you know, you're gonna have to take that mask off to do that, you know. Nowhere in our league rules does it say that, you know, we're not supposed to do mouth to mouth. Excuse me. What I mean by mouth to mouth is we're still using the, you know,
the rebreather or whatever. Yeah. Yep.
I mean? I didn't mean direct mouth to mouth there, but
no, that's it.
Yeah. So CPR can be done. We have at all times 2 weeks worth of PPE equipment, whether it being gloves, masks, eyewear, disposable eyewear, and the drapes and what have you, not to sort of cover us if needed. But touching wood, luckily enough, I haven't had to deal with a life-threatening situation as of yet. God forbid, but all the protocols are set in place and they haven't changed. If anything, we just protect ourselves.
Yeah, and on the ready as always, which is great to hear that I'm sure you're up to speed on those on a regular basis and practicing with regularity regardless. Yeah. The same for you, Don?
Yeah, same with us. Yeah, we haven't, because of the amount of testing, protocols the same. The only change for our own
No, I think he froze for a second, so we'll just we'll skip over to MC. I know you guys didn't get back to season, but was there any discussion of that in leading up to potentially that bubble world of the CFL as it were going to happen in terms of changing protocols or discussing would there be a need to do so?
Yeah, so in terms of when you're building a protocol for the bubble, you would have to take into consideration if there was a situation where there was a COVID case, what would you do?
Right.
If there was, and then all the other football injuries and emergencies that can happen, right? What would you do in those situations? In terms of our protocol here at the facility, I mean, it's obviously changed to accommodate for COVID, but yeah, luckily, knock on wood, we haven't had any emergencies or COVID cases here.
Right. No, okay. It's a great question, and it's always good to make sure that we're considering what might change through this. It's almost been an hour here. I know we started a little bit late, but through all of this, like those component parts for athletic therapists of being up to speed, being informed and relied upon or built into the conversation about health and safety, no matter where you are and where your role is, I think is massive. So making sure that we're all informed on all the regulatory bodies, both our governing body and beyond, and everybody that we interact with is massive. The tiers of personnel, although may not be plausible in most situations. I think we can all sort of know who's a regular and who's not in a team setting, regardless of if it's pro sport or not, and start to identify who are in close contact with each other on a regular basis. The one thing that I often think about is sort of the limited resources in comparison to pro sport, right? Pro sport is high resource, highly funded, and access to virtually everything that you need. Most of us don't have access to that, or did at one point and don't anymore, or are going to sometime. But if we don't, I think all of the points that have been brought up to this point is taking care of yourself first, right? Making sure that you're clear, you're safe, and then acknowledging all of the information that we can access in terms of, testing if there is any symptoms. The trust as early as possible with athletes and clients in terms of self-reporting, because that's what this is all about. Everybody has to take responsibility for their own space because it affects everybody else. So having that trust with your athletes and clients goes a long way. And then again, just being able to pivot as all relevant regulatory bodies have different protocols, and international travel, or our government, or the borders, or school boards, or whoever it is that you're dealing with. So just making sure you're up to speed as best as possible through that. I think it's been you go ahead, jump in.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, probably a lot of people know about this, but there's some great information on the CASM website. They've adapted a tool used that was created by the WHO called the RSAT, so the Return to Sports Assessment Tool, and basically you're able to see your overall risk assessment. It's an overall risk assessment, and it gives a lot of great points and guidelines in terms of what some things you should consider before returning to sport, or in the process of returning to sport.
Yep, and I think that is massive as well for all of us to be up to speed on return to sport. Even if we are in let's call it a best case scenario, and tomorrow they flip the switch and say, okay, everything's good, go back to training. We also have to consider that this has been a deload phase. This has been a detraining phase for all of the athletes, regardless of if they've been hurt or not hurt. So I've had a lot of conversation with people in various parts of the world that I'm sure you guys have as well, that we sometimes just say, oh, it's a green light, that means let's just start doing everything again. And we neglect the fact that it's been, 4 or 5 months, however many weeks it's been, without doing the sustainable load for training or for on-field stuff. So just another additional consideration for sure. And you bring up a great resource, which we can get posted as well. Go ahead, Don.
That's a great point. Just brought to another example for you in load management there. If you remember the last NFL lockout, so where they had the players had, I think, 3 or 4 months off before they went back. So so we were told on a typical preseason, NFL preseason, they would have, somewhere between 2 and 3 Achilles ruptures during that preseason, and then 2 or 3 the rest of the way. So the entire season you'd get another 2 or 3 Achilles ruptures. That preseason they had, I think, between, don't quote me on the number, but it was double digits, 12 to 14.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
12 to 14 Achilles ruptures.
Yep.
Just in preseason.
Yep. A lot can be taken away from pro sport, regardless of if you're working in it or not, or if you want to work in it in the future. Again, with all those resources, I think there's going to be a lot of valuable information that can be taken away. MLB is doing something that's, a little bit different. They're not in a bubble. Obviously, there's been a few games canceled, and their course of sort of action has been a little bit different. It's been scrutinized in certain circles, and other places they've said, we have this under control. And it's been interesting to sort of follow along and to kind of navigate. But I think ultimately, when it comes down to all this testing and having these athletes out there on a regular basis and interacting with sport, and some rule changes like the saliva and no spitting and all these other things, we have to take all of these things sort of with a grain of salt and but at the same time take them very seriously in adapting our practices and our forms of what we are and are not doing based on this pandemic. So not to jump too far ahead, rabbit holes with that. Yeah, so let me just get to, are we good? Yeah, we're just after 9:05. I know this is going to go till 9, but we started maybe a couple minutes late, so let's just go a couple more minutes. Is that cool with everybody? It's been great. It feels like it's been 10 minutes, so just I don't think we're going to get timed out. Are we okay with that? Yeah, okay, let's keep going. Have you thought about what your protocol would be for an athlete that has returned to sport after having COVID? Cardiorespiratory exercise intolerance, chest pain, fatigue, etc. And then there's a Stanford Hall consensus statement. So have you guys considered that in terms of if somebody is COVID positive and they're over it and they're tested and now they're negative, what other things are we considering?
In the NHL, they have to go through cardiac screening mandatory. So if they had a positive COVID test, for them to return to play, obviously they have to be, their test will probably positive, so they don't rely on the test anymore. But they're really worried about myocarditis, so they're really worried about inflammation of the heart, and they've seen some examples of this. And so, for you to return to play in the NHL, you have to go through a cardiac screen.
Yep, and probably not accessible. Yeah, no, sorry to cut you off. It's just probably not accessible to most people to have that done. So what can we do as ATs is ensure that, waivers are signed by physicians when as necessary for clearance. We're covering that angle, but at the same time, looking at the things that you have access to, right? So if you have access to, a BP cuff and you can check somebody's heart rate, doing that on intake and outtake, doing that on a regular basis and see if there are varied fluctuations. Simple tests that take 3 to 5 minutes. The basic foundations of health can be done on a regular basis and tell us a lot about somebody regardless of what they've been through. So I think maybe even just simplifying things back to that, if they've been cleared from COVID, then we start them from basics and treat it like a detraining period or a post-surgical case from the ground up. Karam, anything on that one in terms of return? I don't think you've had anybody positive, but things that you've considered?
So in our case, again, league mandated full cardiac screening. So we're talking about the EKG and echo and blood work to look at the troponin levels in the body. And if everything, all that information is taken and sent to our league mandated cardiologist. He's the only person, him as well as our team cardiologist speak. They're okay on all the numbers, and then the athlete is cleared. But prior to that, the athlete cannot participate in any form of activity, in or outdoors.
Yep. Okay. MC, I know you guys aren't going right now, but this will be a consideration, obviously, with a mass of 115 athletes coming into camp whenever they may or may not have been lifting. They might have been checking the boxes on their apps on their phone, but maybe they weren't lifting. So does the screening potentially look a little bit different on your way in, regardless of COVID positive or not? Just shift gears a little bit in terms of detraining. Will the intakes look a little bit different, you figure, in the future as well?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to think about how we're going to start, almost have like a preseason training camp.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, everybody's at least a base level of fitness before they get back on the field.
Yeah, so some great questions and obviously some great insight from you three. And we all really appreciate you taking the time. And for everybody who's on here live and everybody who's picking this up, like taking the time to have these conversations and gain some access to one another during this time is massive. So thank you all very much for being here, for being a part of this and for being an athletic therapist and part of this community. I think it goes a long way when we can support each other with information, share information, build this profession outward from all of the high quality people that we have on here as panels, hosting, the CATA supporting this from the high performance committee side, and Mike acting sort of as a moderator here and being able to switch us over to Zoom so that I was comfortable and not sweating quite as much as I would have been if we were on Microsoft Teams and all the little things here. So I think we can maybe let's field this one at the end here. We'll make this the last question for the evening, if that's okay. It's not necessarily COVID related, but it is AT related. Because we're in this weird space as well for ATs, right? Like, we're now in this provisional status for those that just graduated. They're being granted provisional status. They haven't written the exam yet, but it's coming up, and so, you know, it would have been written anyway. And for new grads, like, not COVID related necessarily, but do you have any advice for recent or soon to be grads looking to get in the world? This is a great access point. A lot of us came out of school and said, I want to work pro, or have come to that conclusion at some point. Maybe just like a 1 or 2 liner as to your advice if you want to get into pro sport. MC, go for it. Lead us off.
I would say take as many opportunities you can as a student, and network. And I mean, from Ottawa, we're a small group here, so it's pretty easy to network. And that's not just within ATs, that's within the whole like medical professions in Ottawa. And they know people who, you know, work for the Toronto teams. They know people who work for the Vancouver team. So I think, like, just put yourself out there, and you know, so you get your name spoken more often.
Yeah, cool, very good. And Karam, we're gonna finish with the old guy. So Karam, go next, and we'll let Dom finish it off.
Absolutely. Just to mirror what MC said, take all the opportunities that you can get. Don't be afraid to go in there and just show people what you have and what you can bring to the table. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because you know what, you're going to, okay? And the important thing is to learn from them and not to shy away from them. And you also need to understand what you're getting yourself into, because this is a grind. I repeat, it is a grind, okay? You will wake up in the morning and you will go to sleep at night, and all you think about is your athletes, okay? So I'll leave you guys with that.
The best kind of grind, though.
Yeah,
Dom, go ahead, man. Finish us.
Great
finish us
point.
with that one.
My wife tells me it all the time. My wife tells me it's not a job, it's a lifestyle, and it absolutely does change your life, pro sport, and it's a different animal. But I'll echo what Marie and Karim said. It's never turn down an opportunity, never turn down anything, especially don't ever turn down anything because of money, especially as a student, or especially as a coming out of school. I understand everyone needs money. You got to pay rent. You have things to do. But my best advice is, if pro sport is really what you really want to get into, you're probably going to enter in at the grassroots level. Have a great work ethic, work hard, treat it as if you were a pro sport, and it will be noticed, and you'll more than likely move on from there, and it'll start slowly. Like, there's all those stories that you get straight into pro sport, and I was one of them. I was extremely lucky, but it started with a training camp. It started with a 2-week Argo training camp where I got a t-shirt and a pair of shorts, taped, you know, worked 12, 15 hours a day for 12. And it turned into a job the next time. But that doesn't happen for everybody. I don't expect it to. But if I would have turned that down, saying no money for 2 weeks, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay rent? It never would have manifested. So never turn down those small opportunities like that are not really monetarily based. And when you're there, be professional, work hard, and have fun. Like, you'll notice at that level that the guys do like to have fun too.
A great insights from all of you. And there's a quote on here that we've had. I use it in I use it on repeat, and that's, you know, it's not necessarily who you know, but it's who knows your value. And when you can be in a space that somebody recognizes your value and you recognize the value in being there, it's quite rewarding, regardless of if it's pro sport or not. But and then just finding these common grounds of all these things and networking. So that kind of brings me to the conclusion here. And again, wanted to thank you guys for being on here as panelists, and thank everybody for being here. This is massive. It's a great turnout. I've been doing Let's Chat sessions now for a few months since COVID started. They're every Sunday night on a regular basis with the intent of growing this profession from the inside out, with conversations like this, with dialogue with practitioners of all different kinds. We've had, doctors of chiropractic, we've had ATs, we have strength and conditioning coaches on, we've had orthopedic surgeons, general physicians, mental health practitioners, a bunch of ATs have been on already. Every Sunday night, I host these chats for the betterment of not only just myself, but for this profession as a whole, to grow networks, to get these conversations happening for all of us. And those are completely free through Zoom. And then they're uploaded to YouTube and to podcasts like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and things like that afterwards. So they are archived free. And then the extra bonus is the CATA is granted CEUs for these conversations as well. So there is a small membership fee at $10 a month, and you get 0.4 CEUs per week. So you'll end up with way more than you need in a year for $10 a month. And you can find that my handle on Instagram is at firststar.therapy. The website is firststartherapy.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have with any of this stuff. We have guests lined up through October, every Sunday and every Sunday until Sundays stop happening, I guess. So you can get that through membership through the website as well. And it's been a really great platform. Again, not just for me, but a lot of connections have happened. Internships have developed, relationships, job potential, shadowing opportunities, conversations with surgeons, these kinds of things that we don't necessarily have. Again, making lemonade from the lemons that are COVID and this pandemic. There's a little bit of space here to really get to know one another and get to know this profession and how broad and far-reaching it really can be, and how small it is at the same time. We can really support one another with this. So I really appreciate you all for being here again. Dom, Karam, MC, you guys have been great, and the insight is fantastic. I'm sure you'll have plenty of people reaching out to you after this for some advice, and I'd encourage everybody who wants to reach out.
Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com. CONSULT@firststartherapy.com. On Instagram @firststar.therapy, and our podcast host @letschat.at. This is First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.